Inside each of us lives a side we seldom show. We push down anger, shame, jealousy, or desires because they feel risky or wrong. Psychologists call that the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide from others and sometimes from ourselves. This hidden side quietly shapes our choices, why we avoid difficult conversations, why a small comment can trigger a strong reaction, or why we present a polished image online while feeling insecure. You will see simple, everyday signs of the shadow: snapping at a partner after a long day, feeling inexplicably competitive with a colleague, or editing photos to hide flaws, and learn practical, gentle steps to notice and relate to these parts without judgment. By the end, you'll have a few easy questions and actions to use right away so the shadow stops running the show. What the shadow self represents. Parts of our personality that we deny or minimize often continue to shape choices and relationships without our conscious awareness. The idea of a shadow self names those hidden impulses, feelings, and traits that we have pushed out of view because they felt unacceptable or dangerous to our chosen identity. This hidden part is not just a catalog of flaws, it includes strengths and needs that were discouraged, such as fierce independence, creativity, or deep sensitivity. It also holds impulses we feel ashamed of, like anger, envy, or selfishness. Many people hide the same things for similar reasons: family expectations, cultural norms, or personal shame. A calm teacher who snaps at students after a long day may deny a short fuse, while meeting the image of patience. A successful professional who procrastinates on important projects might condemn laziness in others, not seeing that fear of failure drives the delay. Someone who publicly scorns vanity may secretly spend hours on appearance. These are ordinary, specific examples of how the shadow shows up in daily life. The shadow operates by influencing behavior indirectly. When a quality is denied, it often reappears as projection, seeing that same trait in others more clearly than in oneself. In relationships, this looks like repeated fights over the same issue, where each partner accuses the other of what they themselves are avoiding. Patterns of avoidance, overreaction, or repeated career choices can all be traced to disowned parts. Understanding this helps explain why purely logical choices sometimes fail to change an outcome. Acknowledging the shadow does not mean accepting harmful behavior as excusable. Instead, it means noticing recurring triggers, taking responsibility for what you feel, and choosing different responses. Practical steps include honest self-reflection, asking trusted others for perspective, and small experiments, such as admitting a fault in a safe moment or letting a buried interest reappear through a hobby. A person who always criticizes others might try naming their own fear of not being good enough and find it softens their tone. Recognition leads to more freedom, because what is known can be managed and integrated rather than repeatedly acted out without awareness. How suppression creates inner conflict. Suppressing parts of ourselves uses constant mental energy and creates a gap between what we feel inside and what we show outside. When someone repeatedly pushes away an emotion, thought, or desire, their attention must monitor and redirect those impulses. That effort creates cognitive strain, which makes it harder to focus on other tasks and leaves room for the pushed-away material to return more strongly. Research on thought suppression finds that deliberately avoiding a thought often causes it to intrude more frequently, so an attempt to ignore an upsetting memory can lead to unexpected ruminations. The body responds as well as the mind. Keeping anger, grief, or fear under wraps raises physiological arousal, tightened muscles, faster heartbeat, trouble sleeping. A person who habitually swallows tears at work may carry shoulder tension home, wake up tired, and then snap at a family member over a small thing. Emotional numbing can reduce the ability to read others and to make clear choices, because inner signals that normally guide decisions have been muted. In a practical sense, this means someone who hides frustration with a colleague may stop contributing ideas, avoid meetings, or send curt messages instead of addressing the concern directly. A longer-term effect is a fragmented sense of self. When a talent, belief, or feeling is repeatedly hidden, it lives in a separate mental compartment. That split fosters secrecy, which consumes attention and creates rules the person must remember and follow. For example, a person who values authenticity but keeps a relationship secret will constantly weigh what to say and whom to trust. The mismatch between inner values and outward behavior can lead to projection, attributing one's own unwanted traits to others, which then poisons relationships and increases misunderstanding. Conflicts like these are experienced as inner tension, guilt, or vague dissatisfaction, and they show up in predictable ways. Someone who suppresses ambition may feel stuck and resentful, making small passive acts of defiance instead of taking direct steps. Another person who hides grief may suddenly experience overwhelming bouts of sadness when a safe moment appears. Facing even a small part of the hidden material, talking honestly with a friend, admitting a preference, or allowing oneself to feel, often reduces the tension that suppression created. Gradual acknowledgement gives the mind less to guard, and that lightens the persistent inner conflict that secrecy and suppression tend to produce. Why we hide traits to be accepted. Many people conceal parts of themselves because acceptance in social groups often depends on fitting expected roles and behaviors. Feeling accepted reduces social risk and can lead to practical benefits such as job stability, smoother family interactions, or stronger friendships. In everyday settings, this looks like a quiet person forcing small talk at a party to avoid standing out, a new hire muting political opinions during office conversations, or a parent downplaying a creative hobby because it does not match family norms. Fear of rejection is only part of the story. Social learning also shapes what we hide. We watch what others are rewarded or punished for and adjust accordingly. A teenager who hears peers mock someone for being studious may stop mentioning grades. An immigrant who is corrected or ignored when speaking an accent might adopt different speech patterns to avoid bias. These are adaptive strategies in the short term, aimed at reducing conflict and gaining belonging. Stereotypes and role expectations push people to suppress traits that contradict group images. Someone perceived as too emotional in a leadership role may tone down vulnerability, while a person labeled as too blunt may couch direct feedback to seem more agreeable. This kind of masking can prevent misunderstandings. But it also fragments identity. Over time, the effort of maintaining a facade can increase stress, reduce intimate relationships, and make it harder to recognize one's true preferences and needs. An employee who hides chronic health struggles to preserve career prospects may feel isolated and exhausted, even if they keep outward appearances. Sometimes hiding is a deliberate, reasonable choice for safety or strategy. Discretion can protect against harassment, discrimination, or personal harm. Yet when concealment becomes the default, it can limit growth and authenticity. Small experiments help reveal what feels safe. Share a minor preference with a trusted colleague, test a different tone with a close friend, or seek out groups where a particular trait is welcomed. These practical moves create space to be selective about disclosure rather than compelled by fear, and they allow people to balance belonging with integrity. Integrating hidden parts in a healthy way. People commonly keep disowned feelings and impulses out of awareness, and bringing them into conscious life tends to reduce internal conflict and make choices clearer. Many therapists and counselors describe this as recognizing parts of ourselves that were pushed away because they felt unsafe or unacceptable. For example, a person who learned early that anger was dangerous may habitually avoid expressing it, then feel drained or resentful. Another common pattern is hiding ambition to avoid social backlash, which can show up as self-sabotage when opportunities appear. A clear first step is noticing the recurring feelings and behaviors that seem out of proportion or automatic. Start by creating small, safe ways to observe those parts without acting on them immediately. Journaling helps when you write down a moment that triggered a strong reaction and then describe the sensations, thoughts, and urges that followed. Try a short practice of naming the emotion aloud in privacy. First notice shame, or, this is anger, and then ask what that part wants or fears. A practical example, before responding to an email that irritates you, pause and jot what the irritation is connected to. This prevents impulsive replies and can reveal a deeper wound like being overlooked. Mindfulness practices support this noticing. Simple breath-focused attention for a few minutes can create enough distance to choose a kind response. Integrating also requires learning how to express these parts constructively. That does not mean acting on every impulse. It means translating raw urges into behaviors that respect your values and relationships. If a hidden part pushes toward harsh criticism, practice shaping that energy into honest but compassionate feedback. If a hidden desire for independence conflicts with family expectations, try expressing a small, concrete boundary first, a short, testable request, rather than a sudden, sweeping change. Role-playing with a trusted friend or therapist can provide a rehearsal space where the stakes are low and corrective feedback is possible. For matters tied to trauma or deep shame, working with a trained professional is the safest route. Expect obstacles and plan for them. Old coping habits will reappear under stress, and integration is rarely a once-and-done achievement. Setbacks are informative, they point to areas that need more patience or safety. Regular check-ins with yourself help. A weekly review of moments when a disowned part surfaced and what you did with it can show gradual progress. Use supportive practices like self-compassion phrases, clear boundaries, and incremental exposure to feared situations. Over time, people who consistently attend to hidden parts report clearer priorities, steadier emotions, and relationships that mirror their fuller selves rather than a pared-down version. Progress is measured in small, honest choices rather than dramatic transformations. To summarize, the shadow is the part of ourselves we keep out of view, traits, feelings, or desires we were taught to hide. We protect them with denial, perfection, or people-pleasing. Bringing attention to these parts, through noticing triggers, naming emotions, gentle curiosity, and small experiments, helps us act with more honesty and less reactivity. That leads to clearer boundaries, kinder relationships, and a steadier sense of self. You might recognize this in daily life: the colleague who always agrees but later resents, the parent who masks their fear with control, or the friend who uses humor to avoid sadness. These are simple, human patterns. Meeting them without judgment makes them less powerful. If this resonated, take a moment to notice one small thing you've been avoiding today. If you feel comfortable, share your observation in the comments. Your example might help someone else. If you'd like more practical steps, subscribe for future videos where we'll share guided journaling exercises, interviews with therapists, and real stories about integrating the shadow. Thank you for watching and for the care you bring to this work.